to the Sanskrit Podcast, where the ideas of ancient India meet the modern world. On the one hand, poetry should not need any justification, or for that matter, any art should not need any justification. But in today's world, where everything is so hurried, let me ask you this. When was the last time you read poetry? And how do schools and colleges teach poetry? Why does poetry get cut whenever there is a funding crunch? So to cut to the chase, what is the relevance of poetry in today's world? To discuss this with us is Dr. Shankar Rajaraman, an eminent Sanskritist, psychiatrist, polymath, translator, and most importantly, a poet. Namaste, Dr. Shankar.
Namaste.
Dr. Shankar, one of the things that concerns me is, how do you make poetry relevant to modern times? Why should we read Sanskrit poetry or any poetry?
Okay. See, great poetry is relevant for all times. Without any temporal constraint or without any spatial constraint, great poetry is always relevant. That is because great poetry concentrates on emotions, and emotions are never come with an expiry date. Emotions are always relevant to human life. This was something which Sanskrit poets recognized quite early in the history of mankind. In fact, their entire approach to Sanskrit aesthetics has been based on rasa and bhava, which in common terms I would put it across as everything hinges on, or great poetry at least hinges on portraying on rasanubhava, portraying human emotions. And that is...
So while I let you sip your coffee, what I'm asking is something different, is that you remember so many verses. And currently in the student world, one of the big problems is we don't have memory, we don't have concentration, we are preoccupied, multitasking. Can we somehow link poetry to this? Like, can I say, read, memorize Sanskrit poetry, it will help you in your studies as well. Is that?
Yeah, see, this is something which I myself have experimented with. And I know to an extent, as a psychiatrist, or at least as a psychiatric student, as a student of medicine, you are supposed to remember many things. I would feel medicine is one field where you would have to remember many things. Sometimes there would not be any discernible logic to what you remember. Why does a particular nerve come in front of some other artery? Why does it come behind some other artery? There is no reason to it. It is only that you will have to remember these things. The same goes with remembering a lot of drugs and their actions and all. And I have found chandas as a useful tool in remembering the names of many of these things. Meter, yeah, basically. And it is because of meter, as I told you, meter is not something which is though people think of meter as something which is very restrictive in nature, and which is something very calculated, and which the poet has to spend a lot of time about, which is very mechanical, which is very artificial. After some amount of practice, it becomes a part of your nature. In fact, there have been instances when I have dreamt composing parts of verses in my dream, and when I get up, the verse may not be meaningful much, but then it has never broken a metrical rule. So
it's like recycling.
It becomes a part of my nature. For example, I even now remember a verse which I composed when I was studying pharmacology. There was a list of antihistaminics, as we call them, medicines which are commonly used for cold. So diphenhydramine, dimenhydrazine, promethazine was that verse. So it completely fits the meter Anushtu, and I'm still able to remember them in that particular order because I composed the verse, and the verse has an internal logic which helps me, and the rhythm is ingrained in me. So all these things work to my favor, and I can remember these names because of that.
And again, while you take a sip, the concentration is a huge issue now in the world, with people saying that because of mobile phones, people are not listening or any. Again, can we link poetry to that? Does that help? If you had to give a psychiatric patient of yours saying, for this illness, try reading Sanskrit poetry. What are some of these illnesses that would help? Will it calm you down? Will it make you...
See, first of all, regarding how it would be useful for concentration, I am a Ashtavadani basically, which means I do something called as Ashtavadana, where I have to answer questions put to me by a panel of 8 people, 8 pandits, on various different aspects of poetry. I don't have any, I cannot actually link my ability to concentrate on my knowledge of Sanskrit, but I am able to compose verses basically because I have a passion for it. And if you have passion for it, I think you will be able to remember it, and you will also be able to, though there might be distractions, you will still be able to concentrate, and meter comes to your use even here, because see, what happens in an Ashtavadana is you compose every Sanskrit verse has 4 lines, and in one round of that Ashtavadana you compose one pada, one line of the verse. So in 4 different rounds you complete the entire verse. You have 4 different 4 padas which you complete as you traverse across the 4 rounds. And when I come to the second round, I am able to remember the pada which I composed in the first round, only because of first of all, because I have put a lot of thought into it. I have put all my pratibha into it. I have put some beautiful idea into it, and because I have put it I think there is a sort of ahankara there.
Yes.
Which works to my favor, and again because there is also this metrical logic, I am easily able to start from where I stopped.
So we have been discussing about the relevance of poetry in today's world. So I would like to ask you just broadly, why is poetry relevant?
Okay. So when you say relevance, the traditional word for relevance in Sanskrit is prayojana. And prayojanam anuddishya namandopi pravartate. There is no person in this world, even a fool doesn't take up any endeavor without knowing what its prayojana is. It's not that the Kavya Shastrakaras, poeticians who have written about the Shastra of poetry, have not thought about the relevance of poetry. In fact, in the very first verse of Mammata's Kavya Prakasha lists all the prayojanas of poetry. Kavyam yashasertha krite vyavahara vide shiveta rakshataye sadyah paranirvritaye kanta sammitatayopa deshayuje. So this verse in fact sums up all the prayojanas of mundane prayojanas as well as the spiritual prayojanas of poetry. So kavyam yashase is for fame, and Vyakhyanakara, that is the commentator, gives the example of Kalidasa for yashas. So Kalidasa was a poet who became famed because of his poetry. So fame is one of the resultants of poetry. Yashase arthakrite, for earning money, for material goods. And the example given is one of the poet Dhanika, who was conferred with lot of material goods by the king Harshavardhana. He is said to have lived in the court of Harshavardhana. And yashase arthakrate vyavahara vide. Vyavahara vide is to know about the ways of the world. There is no other easier way to know about how people behave than by reading poetry. So to know how people interact with each other, poetry is a very good tool. Vyavahara vide shiveta rakshataye. Shivetara is the opposite of Shiva. Shiva is what is Mangala, what is auspicious. So Shivetara means inauspicious. Inauspiciousness. So Shiveta Rakshata is to ward away inauspiciousness. In fact, that is why there is a rule that most of the poems, most of the kavyas have to start with a benediction to some chosen god, chosen deity, and it is said to ward away evil. So Shiveta Rakshataye, Sadyah Paranirvritaye. This I feel is the most important prayojana of poetry. Sadyah is immediate. Paranirvriti is the greatest happiness greatest joy one could get. So this is a way of instantly getting the greatest happiness a person could strive for in his life. So if you want instant Brahmananda, read poetry. So Sadyah Paranivritta, and this I have dealt about this in quite a detail about the place of rasa in Sanskrit poetry, how Rasananda is almost equivalent to Brahmananda. It's the twin brother of Brahmananda. So this I feel is the most important prayojana of poetry, to get the greatest happiness which no material which you cannot get with any other material goods. Sadyah Paranirvataye Kanta Sammitataya Upadesha Yuje. In order to educate, in order to give Upadesha to the masses in a way which is neither like a Prabhu Samhita nor like a Suhrit Samhita. So there are three ways in which you can give Upadesha to others. Prabhu Samhita, Suhrit Samhita and Kanta Samhita. Prabhu Samhita is like it would be done by a person in authority. For example, a king. The Vedas are said to be like Prabhu Samhita. They tell you, do this, don't do this. So Vidhi and Nisheda, these are called as, in a very terse manner, in a very dominating manner, which not many people would like to. It is not a very efficient way. Maybe it's efficient for few, but most people wouldn't like to be bossed over.
Like as parents, we know this is not true to tell our children.
Correct. So this is Prabhu Samhita. Then we have the Puranas and the Itihasas, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and the Ashtadasha Puranas and the Upapuranas, which are like Suhrit, true stories, like a Suhrit, like a friend. So they educate us like a friend would do us. And but the most efficient way of educating is like one's beloved would do. That is Kanta Samhita. So poetry is said to educate a person just as a wife would educate her husband without being too terse on him, by saying, see, you should behave like Rama, don't behave like Ravana. So in a very soft and an endearing manner, without even the person who is being educated doesn't even feel the burden of being educated. So I think poetry scores over all other shastras, in that it educates us without us even being aware of being educated. So
do you have a prescription for how we can do this as a closure? I mean, should I read one poem a day? Should I read
a series of poems?
For an amateur, where is a place to read?
Okay. See, it is, when I say poetry also gives Upadesha, the intention of a reader should not be on the Upadesha. It should be to enjoy. So when the question of enjoyment comes, you never ask what is the quantity. So you never ask, how much should I enjoy today? Should I enjoy one verse or should I enjoy many verses? So it is only when you go with an intention of being educated, with an intention of learning some morals, with an intention of learning some shastras, only then do you approach poetry with the idea that you should read this much, and you should not like portions in exam. But poetry is beyond that. Poetry is something which you do for enjoyment. So the question never arises at all. In fact, in one of the last verses of his Dasharupaka, Dhananjaya, and written by Dhananjaya and Dhanika, the verse reads that Vyutpatti matram phalamalpa buddhi. It is only a fool who would approach poetry with the intention of getting knowledge and intention of learning. It is not. Learning will occur, education will occur, but that is not the main intention. Learning and entertainment are not two different aspects of poetry. As you learn, you get entertained. As you get entertained, you learn.
So I think, hopefully inspired by you, many of us will at least take our first steps towards enjoying and learning from Sanskrit poetry. Thank you, Dr. Shankar.
Thanks.